focused on today then is the challenges that restaurant owners have from an accountancy point of view.
I'll just take a new client that we started working with 8 months ago. It has a restaurant location called the Flame Broiler. They're kind of a franchise operation, and they serve chicken and rice bowls and things like that. He came to us about 8 months ago, and he had partnered with his brother, decided to buy a franchise. It took him about 8 months to do the build out of the location. The record keeping was pretty poor in the beginning. They didn't have an accounting system set up, so they're spending all this money on leasehold improvements and architects and spending money from different credit cards. And so the first challenge that they run into is just tracking all this. When it came time to actually set up the bookkeeping and do the tax return, had to track the stuff down, and it was fairly difficult for him to do that because he didn't have a good accounting system in place when he started. So that was one thing. So essentially just using an Excel spreadsheet to track his income and expenses, and wasn't really a proper way to do in terms of double entry accounting and keeping the books in order to do a tax return. So what we had to do with him is do a cleanup project. So we took the last 18 months of data from him of all his transactions, historical bank statements and credit cards, and basically just recreated the books for the last year and a half. And so that was kind of our first step. We did all that so we can essentially do the tax return for him. And then going forward, we're doing monthly bookkeeping with him.
So he was using spreadsheets. What did you move him to from that?
We moved into QuickBooks Online. That was the accounting solution.
So did that mean that he had to become familiar with QuickBooks Online?
He doesn't. He just uses it to look at the financial report. He'll look at his profit and loss, balance sheet, general ledger. So he kind of just uses it only for financial reporting, and we use it more to do the internal accounting in terms of the bank recs and things like that. He still uses Excel spreadsheets for some of his just own internal tracking, but now we have a good kind of financial system in place, and so we can really understand if he's making money or not.
How does he provide the data to you so that you can put it into QuickBooks?
There's kind of three components to that. So there's, the bank transactions. Most of our clients, we have them set up a view-only access account for us with his bank, so we can pull the bank statements, view the transactions, and also view his credit card activity. So that's how we get the information initially, and then the bookkeepers will input that and reconcile that in QuickBooks. And then we typically will use historical transactions in terms of our coding. So if there's a new vendor that pops up and our bookkeepers aren't familiar with what that vendor is, they'll send him an email asking him for clarification as to what type of expense this is for.
Is he using a separate card for business, so therefore everything that goes on that card is business?
Yeah, that's what he does, and that's one of our best practice tips we get clients to do, so we can easily ascertain that, okay, everything on this card is business unless you tell us otherwise. So yeah, that's the kind of the first step in the process.
Right.
The other things that he provides to us, he has payroll, so he provides payroll reports to us, sets up online access. I believe he has ADP, so we have kind of an accountant access we can look at, so we can just pull those reports and put the information into the QuickBooks to get the proper breakdown of the payroll expenses. And then the third component is the point of sale system. So he uses a POS system, and that produces weekly and monthly reports. So then we can do a journal entry in QuickBooks to make sure that everything's broken out correctly, showing, do we have gross sales, do we have refunds showing up in the right place, do we have sales tax being recorded correctly. So that's kind of what the POS report supplies us with. And then it also helps kind of reconcile things out in terms of, cash deposits, credit card deposits, right? Because he has all this money coming into his account, but the POS reports is actually a tool that we can use to actually reconcile his accounts against. That's another reason to have that. And that's one of the things that's unique about restaurants is majority of them will have some sort of point of sale system. And so we'll typically, need reports from that in order to complete the accounting. And, one of the challenges that a lot of restaurants have when they're new is setting those reports up correctly. Usually they'll need help from the vendor to make sure everything's set up correctly, because when they do it themselves, it might not be, set up in the right way. Things might not be going to the right categories. Usually there's an alerting curve on that. We'll typically work with our clients to just make sure that it is providing us the data that we need, and if it isn't, then we'll let them know that they need to go back to their vendor and get it set up properly.
So how would you characterize that particular engagement?
Really for him, it's more of just kind of a basic level of accounting, kind of a monthly write-up service, providing monthly financial statements for him.
But the sense I get is that his QuickBooks activity, in his case, he's just completely outsourcing to you. He's not doing any work on QuickBooks other than just looking at the data. Did I understand that correct?
Right. Yeah, that's correct.
So it's fully outsourced in the sense that he's not having to do any work on QuickBooks. Am I understanding it?
Yeah.
Is that the most common way that people do it? Do most restaurants usually have their own person handling QuickBooks, or would most of them tend to outsource it?
It's really a mix.
Do you have an opinion on what tends to work best?
It can make sense that they manage it internally if someone's really dedicated to that task and they have the time. Probably a part-time 20-hour-a-week job for someone who's really in the restaurant to really take on that full responsibility of the accounting department, and they need to be a numbers type of person or inclined to that. Otherwise, they create a mess for themselves.
Can you tell us a bit more just about that particular client, Flame Broiler?
It's a quick serve restaurant. People go in there and they spend $8 or $10 on a meal. Lunch and dinner is mainly what they focus on. They're in Pacific Beach, so they're right on kind of a main street through town. A lot of their business is from locals, but they do get some vacation traffic as well. The locals are their bread and butter, because they tend to be a little bit healthier. So people that are local will want to have a healthy choice that they can come back to on a consistent basis.
Without giving anything confidential away, can you ballpark what revenue level they're at?
Let's say $1 million and under.
So it is possible to run a restaurant and make a profit then, is it?
Is it possible? It is possible. A lot of them don't, though.
Right.
The people that I see that make it work are people that are typically experienced in the business, have a real good sense of the numbers, because a lot of it's testing too, right? And because a lot of restaurant people aren't necessarily numbers people, they're food people, so they like to cook and everything like that, and like the people aspect, but they're not necessarily business people. And sometimes that gets them into trouble, not really watching the numbers the way they should be, or being overly optimistic, or being emotionally attached, to the idea.
I mention it because restaurants by nature are notoriously, they run for a few months and fail within the first year fairly consistently. It's only some restaurants that seem to be able to go from strength to strength. Yeah?
Yeah, that's true. It's one of those businesses where you got to manage it well. You got to manage kind of every dollar. Costs are really important in that type of business. Yeah.